Mathew Jacobson, welcome to Flywheel Leadership. I'd love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Thanks, Graham. Pleasure to be here. So my journey, geographically, I guess I can start there. My accent, you can probably tell, doesn't sound super local in America. So I'm originally from Australia, Melbourne, moved to California almost 8 years ago now. And that actually is relevant, I think, to some of the conversation that we'll have in education, because we do come at thinking about education from an outside perspective. Sometimes, education can be a little bit too insular. So it's important to look at what else is happening around the world and what's working well in the US and maybe what's not working particularly as well. But in terms of my journey, I started out in law. I finished high school. All the adult, mature people say you've got to go to university, you've got to get a degree. I'm like, pretty naive teenager thinking, I don't know what's going on. So if everyone says go to university, I guess I'll go to university. Didn't know what to study. I thought law sounds pretty professional. Hated it, honestly, because it's not a very positive environment, not for me anyway. I did well at university and I graduated with honours, but it's not a very exciting, dynamic industry in my perspective to be working in. But that wasn't really the eye-opener for me. What was an eye-opener is I did a law degree, graduated with honours, as I said, so I thought, wow, I'm pretty awesome, like I'm ready to go and hit the market. Started working, and after years of studying and getting good grades, working really hard, spending a ton of money, as you can imagine, starting work, and then was like, wait a second, I don't know how to do anything. Like nothing that I've just learned for years has actually prepared me to do a single thing in the working environment. And that was really a huge disconnect that is a fundamental problem with education. So that's kind of where I got into the world of education.
So that takes us to Kennedy University and Ducere. If you could tell us a little bit about both and your mission there.
Yeah. So I'm the president and founder of Kennedy University. You probably don't often come across many people that found a university because it's an incredibly long, complex regulatory thing to do. So the way we basically operated is first under a corporation called Ducere. Ducere does everything that you would imagine a university to do: build curriculum, hire instructors and professors, deliver education, onboard students, student support, all of those things without actually being a university. So how we would deliver degrees is we would then partner with universities around the world that would essentially stamp what we were doing. So you would get issued the certification. So Ducere has university partners in Australia, UK, France, Italy, other places. They're doing our degree, we deliver it, but you actually get the formal accredited certification from those other institutions. So we've been doing that for 15 years. So we've got a long history of doing applied, practical, relevant education. And in the background, the very long, slow, laborious process of founding a university, we were doing that. So Kennedy University was officially registered a few years ago now, and it's already had its first graduating class. So students have enrolled, students have graduated. So now we have, in the kind of group that I'm involved in, Kennedy University is its own degree granting US university. And we have our partner, Ducere, which delivers degrees that are certified and awarded through our international partners. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit.
No, it makes perfect sense. Thank you for sharing. Would love to hear a little bit more about how that's really shown up with results from your experience in education, like any success stories that come to mind, whether that's on the student end or some of those partnerships that you're talking about.
Yeah, fantastic. So the first question, if you think about success stories or success, is how do you measure success? What's your measure of success? And many organizations could measure success in many different ways. Your measure of success could be student satisfaction. Your measure of success could be academic research. So for us, we're very, very clear. Our goal and our measure of success is student career progression. That's what we believe we are here to serve. And that's what we actually believe most students are looking for. Yes, you have fun, going to university and, universities often talk about their rankings. We're in the top 10, we're in the top 100. But that can actually be a bit misleading, because when you have a billboard saying we're in the top 100 ranked universities, people think, oh, wow, that must be a great course like law to get a job, or engineering. Actually, it has very little to do with career, if anything at all. It typically stems from academic publishing and academic research. It has nothing to do with jobs. So what is the measure of success? Our measure of success is career relevant education that will actually help you get a job or help you get a promotion. And so we do things that no one else does. Our lessons are taught by world leaders, presidents, prime ministers, Nobel Prize winners, billionaires, CEOs, the head of the CIA, the commander of the International Space Station. Like, number one, learn from people who know what they're talking about, not career academics. And then use those lessons to build applied projects in the career that you are or want to work in. So if you want to be in banking and you do a degree with us, all of your assignments are going to be applied projects on the banking industry, not being told by a professor, you got to write a paper on a Norwegian oil company. It's like, okay, I'll do it because I have to. Don't really know how that's going to help me in my career, spending my weekends and nights researching oil companies in Scandinavia. So that's really the measure of success. Are we successful in that endeavor? I think so. We have students and graduates and alumni from the biggest companies in the world: Disney, LinkedIn, Aston Martin, PwC, KPMG, Kellogg's, Kraft, banks, airlines. Why? Because many people don't want an academic program. Some do, that's fine. But many people want an actual course that's going to help them in their career.
So let's talk about the cost of education. That's a big topic right now. It has been for some time, but it's, from an outsider's view, a lot of times it feels like there's very little solutions or progress to the challenges, right? It's just talked about a lot. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love what you just said there, Graham. I think that's so important, because a lot of people just talk about the problems and complain, but how does that actually help anything? Just, voicing your complaints doesn't help in anything anyone is doing. The question really should be, okay, what are the potential solutions? How are we going to solve this problem? So the cost of education in the US is a massive problem. It's actually a bigger problem even than most people talk about, because the average cost of a degree, that's very easy to calculate. It's around $120,000. Now, any brand that you think of off the top of your head, Yale, Harvard, NYU, we're not talking about that. We're talking about $120,000 is the average cost of an institution that probably no one's ever heard of. Those other institutions that are brands are far more expensive than that. But you overlay that, when I say it's even more expensive, it's kind of interesting. I joke when I'm speaking, I say, how long do you think it takes? Well, that's a really stupid question. How long do you think it takes to do a 4-year degree? Because it's called a 4-year college degree. How long does it take to do a 4-year college degree? Well, doesn't it take 4 years? No, actually it takes over 5 years on average to do a 4-year college degree. So not only are you spending on average $120,000, you're not earning money for over 5 years. Now imagine shortening that to 3 years and you've got earning salary over 2 years. So that difference of not earning money for such a long period and spending so much money is a double negative compounding effect. So the cost is huge. And then the problem with that is the US almost has a complacency. Well, it's like, well, that's just the cost of education. That's what university costs. And when I go on, TV news or talk in events or whatever and say, we can do degrees for $10,000, $15,000 for an entire degree, learning from world leaders, recognitions, awards, blah, blah, blah. People are like, nah, that can't be true. That's too good to be true. How can you do that? I'm like, what do you mean it's too good to be true? Every other country in the world can deliver education for $5, $10, $15, $20, $30,000 for a degree. It is only the US, in the entire planet, it is only the US that has this exponentially higher cost of education. So I kind of flip it and I say, the question isn't why are we so affordable or how can we do it for such a low cost? The question really should be, why is US education 10 times higher than the international average? Imagine if you wanted to buy an iPhone and everywhere in the world it costs $900 or $1,000, but you walk into a store in the US and it would cost $10,000 for the same thing. everyone would be outraged, right? How can you charge $10,000? I can go to Singapore and buy it for $900. But that is exactly what's happening in education, but no one's complaining about it in that way.
Such an interesting way to look at it. And it is one of those things where education, healthcare, which we won't talk about healthcare today. I don't want to scare you. But those topics are just fundamental to the future, right? And we've got to do something about it. So would love to kind of shift to, with the cost of education we just touched on, to the AI landscape and what's already changing in education. Any thoughts on how those go together or don't?
Yeah. So let me come back to AI in a moment and answer it with something that you just touched on that actually is very relevant, which is healthcare. Yeah. I'm not going to certainly go into the whole area of healthcare, but I think it's, if I can summarize it in like a sentence, I think everyone in the US would be comfortable to agree that healthcare is not perfect. Okay? Yep. Like, I think we can all agree on that. So if healthcare is not perfect for various reasons, wait times are too long, cost is too expensive, insurance is too bureaucratic, blah, blah. Could you imagine anyone saying, well, why don't we just get rid of doctors and hospitals because healthcare is not working? That would just be an insane thing to suggest. No one would suggest that. Obviously, the answer is, how do we improve healthcare? So in universities, that is actually the commentary that you start to see. Oh, well, universities aren't working, so why don't we just forget the university degree, and why don't we just do a boot camp or a short course, something that's cheaper, easier to do? So the answer of why universities are so critical, and then that'll come back to skills and things like AI. Why university is so critical. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's a problem with university, fix the university system. Why is it worth fixing the university system? If you were speaking to a nephew, Graham, that's 17 and saying, I'm just about to finish high school and I don't think it's worth going to university. I'll just do a 12-week course, really cheap, and get a job. What do you think I should do, uncle? And the answer is, well, look at the labor market. And look at the hiring market. 70% of jobs in the US require a degree to apply, just to apply. If you do not have a degree, you are at a substantial disadvantage. So even though it's extremely expensive and takes a long time, if you don't have a degree, you're at a substantial disadvantage. So our model broadly is, say, if universities are too expensive, they take too long, and they're teaching you academic stuff that's not relevant, how do we solve this problem? Okay. This is a real tough one. Why don't we make education more affordable, do it faster, and make the education more relevant to career skills? It's actually not that complicated, right? Just that's really all you need to do. So that's what we do at Kennedy University. Shorter degrees, very affordable, $10,000, $12,000 for an entire degree. All practical, no academic exams, no thesis. You're doing practical project-based assignments. So and that was a bit of a long answer, Graham, to your question around AI. What does that mean? The labor market is always shifting. Always. AI is the new buzz that's happening right now. But if you go back 30 years, there's always something new that's coming out, some technology, some shift in the marketplace. So you always want to be current and up to date. AI is the sort of thing that you want to embrace. You want to build skills in. You want to be at the head of the curve and not behind, because you will get left behind. I'm certainly not a doomsday prophecy person, because I've seen this at World Economic Forum events decades ago. People are like, this technology, when home computers came out, people thought, 70% of jobs won't be around anymore. When ATMs, automatic teller machines in banks came out, they thought, 70% of jobs in banks won't exist anymore. Well, we've never had more employees in banks ever in history as we have today. So if history teaches us anything, is that technology creates opportunities. It doesn't take away opportunities. Now, that might shift opportunities. If you're a taxi driver, you might be concerned that, when automated cars are a prominent thing, we might not need taxis as much, but there'll be other jobs. It'll shift to other opportunities. And so AI is a perfect example of be at the forefront of technology and innovation. And it's a perfect time to get education. We do education in AI as well. It's a perfect time because it's not embedded fundamentally across organizations right now. It's kind of at that cusp where every company is thinking we need to do something in this space, but we're kind of not really sure what we should do and how we should approach it. So you come into an organization with that skill set, you're immediately day one adding value to an organization. That's what you want to be. You don't want to be a liability. You want to be a value add.
That's fascinating. So going back to your 16, 17-year-old that you're talking about and giving advice to. So what is your advice to that age or to an adult going back to school? Like how would you advise they approach it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the way I would approach it is make an informed decision. Number one is make an informed decision. So, most people don't know all of the options that are out there. So I'm in Los Angeles right now. So down the road, literally on the other side of the mountain, is UCLA. That's a pretty great brand, right? You can go to UCLA, you can get a degree. Fantastic. Super expensive. But a lot of people don't realize that you can go to a community college for virtually free. Do 2 years to get your associates. Transfer. They actually have transfer officers in the community college to help you then transfer into UCLA or other universities. And then you complete 2 years at university. You've just halved your cost. And that just takes someone who's in the know that says, there's another way to skin a cat. There's another alternative. It doesn't have to be a 4-year degree from day one till you graduate in an institution. We have a lot of international degrees. A lot of people don't even realize that this is an option, that you could live in Ireland or France, pay the cost of a university, and it will still be cheaper. And you'll have, wow, what an amazing experience. Get to live in France for 3 years, have a cultural, exchange and different type of experience, learn a language, whatever. You can do that and it'll still cost you less than going to a university locally in the US. Now, that doesn't mean that's the right solution for everyone. What I mean by informed is, have you looked at online degrees? Have you looked at international degrees? Have you looked at different pathways? There are so many options and you want to look at all the options. And then the other thing to advise that 17-year-old niece or nephew or whatever is always, I like to work backwards. I like to look at the end goal and work backwards. Well, why are you going to university, or why are you even thinking about university? What is your goal? Well, my parents are telling me I need a degree. Oh, well, that might be your goal. But what is the goal? The goal is I want to get a job. For another person is, I want to join the soccer team at the university. I'm passionate about sports. Someone might be really wanting to live away from home and join a fraternity. They're all different goals. And being very clear on what your goal is, because if your goal is, I want to join a fraternity and join a sports team and make a bunch of friends, versus I want to get the best job, they are very different goals, and that could direct a very different direction of which institution you go to, where you should go, how much you should spend. So I think that's really important to be clear on what is it that you really want and what are the options available, and make sure you're exploring all of the options.
How about we talk a little bit more about Kennedy University and the programs that you offer? Can you walk us through a little bit about what that looks like?
Yes. So Kennedy University specifically only offers master's programs. It really is a focused leadership university. It's online, and we do MBA programs. So we do some cool things. Like, we actually launched the world's first MBA in space leadership. I was speaking at the Kennedy Space Station. There's Kennedy Space Center a couple of months ago. Amazing, like super exciting. It's a burgeoning high growth industry, the space sector in the US and all over the world. The space sector has been around since Kennedy launched, the moon mission many, many decades ago, but it always used to be a government run centralized industry. Now it is a very large fractured commercial industry. There's startups everywhere. It's cool. It's a really interesting industry to be in. And then you might just want to be in a traditional industry, work in advanced manufacturing, work in banking, whatever. So you can do global MBAs, executive MBAs, etc. So for Kennedy University, the focus is on management and leadership. So it's really adult learning that is very focused on career progression. We also do, as in our group with Ducere, do bachelor degrees, but our bachelor degrees are deliberately international. Why? This doesn't mean we're right and someone else is wrong. We're just different. Internationally, a bachelor degree is a specialized degree. In the US, you must do a liberal arts degree. Now, we're career focused. So we don't want to be teaching students Roman history and calculus and algebra and sociology and Latin dance classes, and making students pay a fortune for those classes that they don't necessarily want and didn't ask for. That's not our model. In international degrees, like in the UK, which is, one of arguably the best two university systems in the world, most people would say the US, UK have the strongest higher education systems, you can do a specialized degree. So if you've got a 17-year-old who thinks, you know what, I'm just passionate about design, I want to be a graphic designer. You know what you can do in the UK? You can do a degree in graphic design, and that's all you study. You do 3 years, not 5, in graphic design. So when you go and apply for a job, you say, I've just been learning graphic design for 3 years. Here's my portfolio. Here's what I can do. No one hiring a graphic designer cares if they've done an algebra class or a dance class. So answer to your question is we do bachelors as well, but they're much shorter, much cheaper, but it's not for the fraternities and the sports. If you want that, go to USC, go to UCLA, go to NYU, amazing schools, but for a very different purpose.
Makes sense. What's the most fulfilling aspect of your work?
The most fulfilling aspect of our work, I am very clear on. We're a public benefit institution. We do scholarships all over the world. We've helped 200,000 students in Africa across 27 countries. So, helping people is the most fulfilling and the best part. In the context of what we're talking about today, what that means is we have a lot of non-traditional learners, first in family to go to college, minorities, low income, people who maybe just started working when they were 18 because they just needed to start earning money and get a job. And they just never had a chance to go to university. Now they're 30 and they're thinking, you know what, I'm 30 years old. I'm still earning a relatively low wage. I've got no credential. I'm kind of not going anywhere. And they think I've missed the boat. You know what? I never went to university. I'm not going to go and sit on a campus now with teenagers for 4 or 5 years to get my bachelor's. I should have done it back when I was a teenager, but I missed the boat. And when they speak to us and they realize that there's all these affordable, flexible ways to actually get a degree and boost your career, and they're like, oh my God, this changed my life. This is my dream come true. That's the best, most fulfilling thing, when you're literally helping people to get the dream of a degree that never thought that would be possible for them.
Anything that comes to mind, Matt, where you've changed your mind on it through the course of your career or life in general?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that is a mindset that is so important, particularly in an environment where there's a lot of polarization in politics and other things. I think that, ego is the death of innovation. Anyone who thinks I know best, I've got all the answers is, going to be the next Kodak or Encyclopedia Britannica or taxi industry or whatever else. It's this hubris that, we know best. So the general comment I would make about that is always be open to what is changing, what can we learn, what is different. There's tons of things that we've done that we tried and didn't necessarily work. That's okay, because I do really believe in fostering an environment where you can have trial and error. That is an experimental, innovative approach. All the great, innovative, progressive companies will have that mindset as opposed to a we know best mindset. So, lots of things that, in hindsight, maybe weren't the best decisions or the best things to do. But every day we've still got that mindset. So internally, we have degrees and programs that we deliver in, say, artificial intelligence that we touched on. Internally, we run lots of pilots in artificial intelligence, and something sounds great on paper and you try it and then you realize students actually didn't really like that so much. The feedback wasn't fantastic. Okay, we ran a pilot. Let's maybe not pursue down that path, but what about trying it this way? So I think that just general mindset of being open to ideas, reading a lot, seeing what's out there, going to conferences, going to events. It comes back to what I said before on the student side of making an informed decision. Just get out there. And if you're going to look at a college, don't go to 4 or 5 US colleges that are on the hit list for everyone. Think about completely different alternatives and look at what are all the options that are out there, and just have that mindset of innovative thinking and open-mindedness.
Matt, I know you've met with a lot of people around the world, so I would love to hear if there's anything that you've seen that either really resonates as far as like, what do you see that's a common through line with those that are either successful or those that struggle as leaders?
What a great question. So having 250 global leaders that we filmed, they also do live webinars that are part of our curriculum. Presidents, prime ministers, Nobel Prize winners, Nobel Peace Prize winners, founders of multi-billion-dollar companies. One thing I can say for sure is that there's no common thread. Some people are very lucky. They're just totally like experimental, and they just happen to hit the right thing at the right time, and they were very fortunate. Other people are incredibly smart, incredibly hardworking, and persist for years. I've got examples of Nobel Prize winners who talk about everyone told them for decades, and these are smart people, who are scientists and PhDs. And to imagine someone at that level that's still being told, you're wrong, this science that you're doing is Mickey Mouse science, it's going to fail, you're never going to get anywhere. And they're like, no, I believe in what I'm doing. And then 20 years later, they win the Nobel Prize because they just, revolutionized the thinking in something. Like, that's amazing confidence and will to have. So I think that there's a lot of variation. What I like most, and I'm not going to certainly name any names on the negative side, but I think character is so important. Definitely one thing that would be, strong throughout leadership is determination, motivation. That goes without saying. You've got to have drive and you've got to have motivation. But character, for me, is really important. And I can tell you, having met heads of state and sitting down with heads of state, that title alone doesn't mean anything, because you can meet a head of state that is, a great person, considerate, thoughtful, nice, respectful. And who am I? Like, they're just meeting, someone in a university, but they still have respect. They're still interested, and they take what we're doing really seriously. And then you have another person that, pardon the French, you might say is a bit of a dick. It's like, are you serious? Like, so arrogant. You're so up yourself. Like, okay, so yeah, you had a successful political career, but it doesn't mean you need to be rude or arrogant. We're all people at the end of the day. And I think when you treat people with respect and treat people well, you bring people on board, catch more flies with honey. I think that mindset is something that resonates with me, because I see so many successful people that you think might have that ego, and they're just like down to earth. You can grab a beer, have a lunch, have a conversation. They're willing to help you when you've got a question, something that you wanted their advice on. And it's just like, wow, this is a billionaire, but they're actually spending time to help me with, something that's going on in our organization that we wanted their advice on. So that, to me, is the most important critical factor.
What have we missed that we should have talked about today?
I think we've talked about some really interesting points. I think the only takeaway, maybe not that we've missed necessarily, but, takeaway to think about, is that university education is a critical aspect to career progression. So you don't take it from us. Look at US government, Bureau of Labor statistics on what impact a degree will have over not having a degree. I think intuitively a lot of people would say, yeah, we probably agree that having a degree is better than not having a degree. But the challenge for most people is they think it's unattainable. You don't know what you don't know. So the main sort of takeaway there would be for everyone to just explore and be open-minded to options. Don't be closed off thinking it's too expensive, it's too hard, I probably wouldn't qualify, I'm not an academic person. I love these stories. We have, from a disability access perspective, we only do online degrees. We've had a 100% legally blind person do our online degree and graduate. It's like amazing. You've got all these tools, braille readers, helping people with anxiety, different, social stresses that they might have. Whatever your concern is, don't close yourself off. At least have that little window to think, is there a way I could get that dream of a degree if I really wanted to? How could I do it? What are the options that are available? I guarantee you there's an option available to anyone if you find what's out there.
What do you want those you've worked with to say about your impact on them?
Those that we've worked with, in terms of my impact on them, I would say changing it slightly to what is the organizational impact on them. And from a university perspective, we hear this a lot from our staff. And this is a really good endorsement that staff say, I love the work that we are doing, like really love the work that we are doing. And that's because they're talking to people, grown men, that could be in tears saying, I never thought I would have the opportunity to be standing on a campus and graduating. And here I am. I've made my parents proud. I wanted to be a role model for my kids. And so it's not just a job. Like any of us could get a job, you know, selling computers, selling furniture, whatever. That's fine. People need to make an income. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, you're supporting your family. That's a very admirable thing. But it's really exciting for me personally and for our staff when this is not a charity, like our staff are on salary and getting paid. It's a job, but you're also genuinely helping change people's lives. That's really cool. Is.
How can listeners best find you or follow you in your mission?
Great question. So for Kennedy University, just go to Kennedy letter U, kennedyu.education. Very easy. For our international programs, our bachelor's and master's that are international, you go to ducere.education, and no one really knows Ducere. It's a Latin word for to lead, so I'll spell it out, Ducere, ducere.education. And through there, you'll find a host of information, awards, webinars, course information. But mostly, you know, we're a personable organization. So you can just actually request a consultation. Of course, that's free. Speak to someone anywhere in the world. We have advisors in the UK, Canada, across the US, Australia, really all over the world. So speak to someone really, and not just us, speak to other institutions and find what is the best fit for you. Don't get too enamored by marketing materials, you know, and brochures. Do the homework, do the due diligence, speak to different organizations, see what's out there, and the perfect program will be there for each person. It's just a question of finding what is the right fit for
Mathew
each person.
Jacobson, Kennedy University, thank you for being on Flywheel Leadership. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Graham. Absolute pleasure. Have an awesome day. Have an awesome weekend. Cheers.